The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros arrived in Saudi Arabia on an official visit to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries. Also in Mexico, the President López Obrador's ruling National Party won the governorship in Mexico State, the country's most populous region. And the Russian government repels a large-scale offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces against the southern Donetsk. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Sunday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros arrived in Saudi Arabia on an official visit to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries. On his Twitter account, the Bolivarian president expressed that he continues with his international agenda, now from Saudi Arabia. In another tweet, Maduro emphasized that his visit seeks to stabilize and recover all, and that with perseverance, they will achieve fair and necessary agreements. This is the Venezuelan president's third visit to the country, and he is scheduled to meet with the Saudi prime minister. The two nations are aiming for a mutually beneficial cooperation in areas such as petrochemicals, energy, agriculture, information, and communication. Also, let us remember that relations between Venezuela and Saudi Arabia trace back to the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEP, which both nations joined on September 14, 1960. In this sense, the first steps towards closer relations came in the late 70s. However, it was not until President Hugo Chavez came to power that bilateral ties broadened, paving the way for a new stage of cooperation, brotherhood, and solidarity beyond oil, always based on diversity and mutual respect. Let's move on to other topics. Mexico's most populous state turned its back on decades of single-party rule, deciding to move forward with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's ruling Morena Party over the Institutional Revolutionary Party. According to the National Electoral Institute, the candidate Delfina Gómez of the Morena Party won between 52.1% and 54.2% of the ballots in the state of Mexico, compared with 43% to 45.2% for Alejandra del Moral, representing the opposition coalition. In this sense, the Electoral Commission reported that turnout for these elections was between 48.7% and 50.2% of the eligible state voters. Shortly after the preliminary forecast was announced, del Moral conceded and congratulated Morena's candidate for her victory. And also in the midst of the election day, voters were clear about the reasons for which the state of Mexico elections are particularly significant to the country's political landscape.
It is important because the state of Mexico is a place where there are millions of Mexicans. It is a very representative place for the elections next year, which are for voting for the president, so it is like a thermometer to see how the elections will be next year. That is why it is important to participate.
Today we are sick and tired of everything that is being done, of all the corruption that exists, and not only by one, but by many.
In Cuba, the Ministry of Public Health reported that 45 people remain injured after a traffic accident occurred on the Havana-Melena highway, which caused the death of 4 people. The accident occurred on Saturday in the municipality of Arroyo Naranjo when the vehicle belonging to the National Bus Company overturned south of Havana. Of the injured, 5 are in serious condition and 40 are in care. In all cases, the patients are being attended by multidisciplinary teams and the relatives are being kept informed. In addition, the authorities informed that the resources for medical care in each of the institutions are guaranteed. In Colombia, a new massacre was reported in Ranch, where 3 people were killed, including a minor. The incident took place in the village of Agua Bonita early Sunday morning in the rural area of San José del Guavire. According to preliminary information provided by the National Police, 2 assassins broke into the establishment and shot repeatedly at the owner's wife and her 15-year-old stepson. So far, the National Police have not communicated the motives of the crime, but recent figures indicate that this will be the 41st massacre so far this year. In the United States, a major fire broke out on Saturday at an oil tank complex in southwestern Louisiana. Local authorities have issued evacuation orders and shelters for residents and businesses near the facility. No information about possible casualties has been provided at this time. Mandatory evacuations were in effect for those as far as 1.5 miles from the tank farm. It is unclear what caused the fire at the Calcasieu Web refinery. However, the company attributed it to a lithium strike. And according to a clinical study presented on Sunday in the U.S., a pill proved effective in halving the risk of death from some types of lung cancer when taken daily after the tumor is removed. The research was unveiled in Chicago at the largest annual conference of cancer specialists, organized by the American Society of Clinical Oncology. Lung cancer is the most lethal one, with approximately 1.8 million deaths each year worldwide. AstraZeneca's osimertinib, the treatment presented on Sunday and marketed under the name of Tagrisso, is aimed at those suffering from so-called non-small cell cancer and who have a particular type of mutation. According to Yale's Dr. Roe Herbst, who presented the study in Chicago, the data on the drug are impressive since it helps prevent the disease from spreading to the brain, the liver, and the bones. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Austria, OPEC Plus members reached an agreement to limit crude oil production during this year and the next to protect prices. Within the framework of a meeting in Vienna with view to finding solutions to the fall in oil prices, Russia announced that it will extend its voluntary cut in crude oil production by 500,000 barrels per day during all of 2024. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, will maintain oil production at 10,478 million barrels per day. At the meeting of partner countries in the organization, it was decided to adjust the general level of oil production for 2024 to 40.46 million barrels per day. This decision was taken to achieve and maintain oil market stability, as well as to generate long-term predictability.
Countries that had agreed to do the voluntary cuts have extended that voluntary cuts to end of 24, and I would have to call it the Saudi lollipop, which is 1 million barrel of reduction for the start that starts at the 1st of July, and that million is also extendable.
And in Poland, 500,000 demonstrators packed the streets of central Warsaw on Sunday, according to the Polish opposition organizers, claiming one of the largest anti-government demonstrations in the last 30 years. People came from all over the country after the former Prime Minister Donald Tusk, head of the centrist opposition Civic Platform Party, called for the protest against the high cost of living, the scam and lies, and for democracy, free elections, and the EU. Leaders of the most opposition parties encouraged their supporters to join the march against the Nationalist Law and Justice Party, led by Jarosław Kaczyński, in power for almost 8 years. There were also smaller rallies in other cities and towns in Poland. Most polls suggest that the Peace Party will win the upcoming elections with around 30% of the vote, but without winning a majority. We move on to other topics. In Italy, airport workers go on strike for 24 hours to demand workers' rights. Employees of the air transport sector affiliated to the Italian Labour Confederation Union and other unions are participating in the strike. The strike is in protest against the contract renewal for ground staff at Italian airports. They are also demanding the return of purchasing power to the salary and dignity of the thousands of airport workers who face daily tasks with professionalism and seriousness in absolute inadequate conditions, something that the sector describes as unacceptable. On Sunday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg urged the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to lift its veto on Sweden's candidacy, saying that Stockholm has complied with Ankara's demands. Turkey has been blocking Sweden's entry into the Atlantic Alliance for 13 months, considering it too lenient towards the Kurdish militants on the territory, whom Ankara sees as terrorists. After meeting with the Turkish leader, who began a third presidential term on Saturday, Stoltenberg told reporters that Sweden has taken actions towards Turkey's concerns. The latter and Hungary are the only two of the 31 NATO member countries that have not yet ratified Sweden's membership in the alliance.
President Erdogan and I discussed a range of issues that will be on the agenda for next month's NATO summit in Vilnius. We addressed NATO's strong support to Ukraine, work to further bolster our deterrence and defense, and support to Ukraine, and the importance of our presence in Kosovo, and not least the fight against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. We also discussed Sweden's bid for NATO membership. Turkey has legitimate security concerns. No other ally has faced more terrorist attacks. Sweden has taken significant concrete steps to meet Turkey's concerns. This includes amending the Swedish constitution, ending its arms embargo, and stepping up counter-terrorism cooperation.
And now we move on to other topics. The Russian government confirmed on Monday its forces thwart a major Ukrainian offensive in the Donetsk region, destroying tanks and armored vehicles. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, Kiev launched a large-scale offensive in 5 sectors in South Donetsk, using 6 mechanized and 2 tank battalions. The ministry further said that more than 200 Ukrainian troops had been killed, and the 16 tanks, 3 infantry fighting vehicles, and 21 armored personnel carriers destroyed. In this sense, the Russian government named the Ukrainian units involved in the attack as the 23rd and the 31st Mechanized Brigades. Meanwhile, Kiev recently stepped up artillery and drone attacks on Russian cities, including the assault of a sabotage group in the province of Belgorod on Sunday. In this context, the Russian government warned about a possible escalation of tensions if Ukraine receives missiles with longer range. In statements to the press, the spokesperson of the Russian presidency, Dmitry Peskov, stated that the level of tactical and technical characteristics on the weapons sent to Ukraine is constantly increasing. The Russian official warned that France and Germany are already talking about the supply of missiles with a range of 500 kilometers and more. Peskov stressed that the situation forces Russia to be more focused, stronger and mobilized, which he said could unleash a new spiral of tensions. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StoreSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In India, on Sunday, authorities are working to identify the victims of the worst train accident in the Asian country in this century. In the last report, the death toll rose to more than 275, while the number of injured has risen to more than 1,000. So far, 88 bodies have been identified, while the Southeastern Division of Indian Railroads has been running special trains for families to reach Balasore, in the eastern state of Odisha, site of the accident, and where bodies are being held in hospitals and even in a school. Following rescue works at the accident site, the authorities also made use of internet to publish photographs of some unidentified deceased, many of them taken at the accident scene, as well as lists of the injured under treatment. India's Railroad Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said on Sunday that the triple train crash was caused by a change in the electronic interlocking, that is, a signaling fault. The official also said that those responsible have already been pinpointed as part of the investigation. Meanwhile, at the accident site, workers removed the remains of the crash, involving the 2 passenger trains and one of goods.
2 train bogies are scattered to the left, a few are right. It means we couldn't really calculate or understand what situation had happened, because 3 trains were there, and the situation was like it was completely dark. This place was completely dark, no lights, nothing.
The government of China condemned military alliances similar to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in Asia and the Pacific at a security forum in Singapore. China's Defense Minister Li Shangfu said that the Cold War mentality was resurfacing in the region and warned that military alliances such as NATO could lead the region into new conflicts. On the sidelines of the annual Asia-Pacific Intergovernmental Security Conference, the defense minister called on the region's leaders to promote their common interests and resist hegemony and bullying. In that sense, Li pointed out that some states intervene in the internal affairs of other countries, applying unilateral sanctions, threatening with arms, and color revolutions. Likewise, the Minister of Defense called for a solution to international affairs through dialogue. On Sunday, Syria's Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad discussed with his Iraqi counterpart Fuad Hussein in Baghdad means of bolstering relations between the 2 countries and upgrade them in the interests of the 2 brotherly nations. During a press conference following their meeting, Mekdad thanked Iraq over the assistance provided to Syria following the catastrophe of the earthquake. The Foreign Ministry and the minister also called for consolidating the efforts to overcome impacts of the Western coercive economic measures aimed at starving the people, calling these measures immoral. For his part, the Iraqi foreign minister said they addressed joint work to combat the drug trade. The top officials also said that the humanitarian situation in Syria is difficult and needs action at the regional and international level to facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid. And the Nigeria Labour Congress, the NLC, has announced strike plans over fuel supply price hikes. Strikes and protests were declared this week against the West African country's new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, over fuel price hike, which will represent a big challenge right at the beginning of his term in office. The Nigerian population is struggling with the price hike after the president's declaration to remove the public fuel subsidy. The price of petrol has tripled to about 540 naira, the official currency of Nigeria, equivalent to $1.20. Previously, the country spent more on fuel subsidy than on medicine, health, education, and banking, hence the order for the price increase. And several hundred militants of the Moroccan left-wing trade union movement denounced on Sunday in Casablanca the high cost of living and the inaction of the government despite the ban on demonstrations. Coming from all over the country, the trade unionists of the leftist Democratic Confederation of Labour, the CDT, gathered in the historic center of the economic capital and expressed their dissatisfaction with rising prices and the tax on purchasing power. Tariq Alawi El Hussein, member of the union's National Council, said initially the CDT wanted to organize a national march in Casablanca, but the local authorities prohibited the demonstration. The march took place without major incident. Morocco is facing a rise in prices, especially of food products, which affects the most modest households. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.